I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. So today I'm going to be reviewing one of my fellow Simon & Schuster authors, Mr. Jack Carr. Going to be reviewing specifically his second novel in his James Reese thriller series called True Believer. I already reviewed The Terminal List earlier, a few months ago. I just read True Believer, and I am going to be getting to book number 3, The Savage Son, soon. Hey man, I want to, I'm published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Jack Carr is published by Simon & Schuster's Emily Bester Books. I want to support my fellow Simon & Schuster authors. Not only that, but Jack Carr lives in Park City, Utah. I live in Utah, Draper, Utah. I want to also, promote other Utah writers. So let's get to it. True Believer, book number 2 in Jack Carr's James Reese thriller series. True Believer, hey, starts out with this quote. Somewhere a true believer is training to kill you. Hey, that is the truth. That is the truth. Politically, I don't talk about what I am much politically, but I'll just tell you, I'm kind of a conservative-leaning atheist. So I am hated by both the right and the left. Equal measure. They both hate me. Conservative-leaning atheist. I do believe, though, that religious fervor is going to be the downfall of our society unless we can right the ship and stop with the nonsense. And I'm not just talking about religions like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, paganism, people that worship Sun Ra. All of it. All of it is nonsense to me. And, we gotta right this ship. Otherwise, some true believer is going to kill every single one of us in the name of his deity. So that's what we're starting out with, That's what we're starting out with here. Not only that, but religion, ideology just in general, if you're too set in your ideology, it can be dangerous, whether you're far right or far left or just consumed by some cultish religion. It's not good. You've got to be free. You got to free your mind. You got to be middle of the road. Enough with my rant. That's all you're going to get out of me. I mean, I don't talk on social media much about any of my political views. That's probably the most I've ever said. But it's important to this novel, True Believer. The Terminal List, I love the Terminal List. It was about vengeance. Our main character, the Navy SEAL James Reese, was on a mission of vengeance. Kind of contained to the United States, his travels in this book. True Believer is more about redemption. What happens to someone who kills for a living? How do they... warriors, people that come back from war, having seen all the horrible things they've seen, having suffered all the PTSD that they've seen, how do they get back to regular life? How do they just deal with it? I work at the Utah State Prison, and I've seen, some things myself, not stuff that is like that warriors see, but stuff that law enforcement officers see, stuff that prison guards see, and it's rough, it's tough. In the heat of the moment, you don't really think about it. It's 2 or 3 or 4 years later where the PTSD really starts to settle in. And we're starting to deal with some of these themes in True Believer, where we've got a character, James Reese, who is a Navy SEAL, who's done some pretty bad things, some pretty brutal things in defense of his country. And now he's got to deal with the aftermath, the psychological aftermath. And this book is about vengeance. This book is about redemption. Again, Jack Carr was a Navy SEAL himself. So his main character, James Reese, is a Navy SEAL. Jack Carr, in writing these books, he puts a lot of Navy SEAL stuff and a lot of government stuff in these books, and he has it screened by, I don't know who screens these books, but whatever government agency does that, they redact parts of the books. So a lot of the parts of these books have been redacted, like a line through them, like a lot of the sensitive information. A lot of state secrets, I guess, get redacted out of these books, which makes them all the more interesting. You know, let's start out with the True Believer. It starts out with a terror attack in London, set up by Russian dude, using true believers, using religious fanatics as his pawns. You know, this book becomes much more international in scope than this first book. So our second book, now suddenly we're going all over the world, much like a Tom Clancy or Robert Ludlum or Brad Thor book. So we're going all over the world now. We're not just contained to the United States like in the Terminal List. Now we're going all over the world. In fact, our main character, James Reese, the Navy SEAL, he is a wanted man he's a wanted man by the American government because of the things he did in the Terminal List. And he's a wanted man, and he flees on a sailboat. Now, this is one thing that got me hooked on the book pretty quickly is James Reese, a Navy SEAL, he sets off on a sailboat all by himself across the Atlantic Ocean, which is insane. You know, maybe a Navy SEAL could pull that off. I mean, who wants to sail across the Atlantic Ocean by themselves in a small sailboat? It seems nuts. I don't even want to get on a cruise liner and make that trip. I mean, they could have as many buffets as they could pack onto that cruise liner, and I still, because I love buffets, I still would not get on there and sail from the East Coast to Spain or wherever. That's a long trip. And how many people fall off of cruise liners? In every given cruise that's out there, don't like 10 or 15 people just fall overboard? I mean, the odds are just not good that you're going to make it. I could be wrong on those statistics. I probably am. But anyway, James Reese sails. He's in trouble from the first book. He sets sail across the globe all alone to escape his troubles on a sailboat, heading from the East Coast to Spain. The Azores is where he stops, and I learned some things about the Azores that I did not know, which is one of the reasons I like reading thrillers that are set in other parts of the world. He gets there, things happen, he goes to Africa, he becomes like a hunting guide or something like that. I mean, half the book, you know, there's a terrorist attack at the beginning. Half the book, James Reese, our hero, just he's a hunting guide, kind of a person in Africa. We talk about a lot of the problems with hunting in Africa and the Chinese government, you know, stealing the ivory from the elephants and all this stuff. Been interesting to read about for sure. It's not till about halfway through this book where James Reese, our Navy SEAL hero, gets approached by the American government to say, hey, we've got these terrorists that are just bombing places. For instance, London at the beginning and a few other places, and we need somebody to stop this stuff from happening. And so they recruit Mr. James Reese, our Navy SEAL, our hero, and off on the adventure we go about halfway through the book, which is cool. I like the fact that it took him a while. I like the fact that our main guy was not thrust right into the main plot. For a while, he just kind of chilled and did his own thing on the sailboat and in Africa with the hunters. There's a lot of themes that Jack Carr is playing with his character. I discussed some of them in this book. Some of the others in this book that now he's starting to discuss a lot of stuff about, you know, themes about leadership, team building, servitude, how bad leaders compared to good leaders and how they build their teams and how teams can be successful. How one bad guy can ruin an entire Navy SEAL team and one good leader can bring that SEAL team back. Just stuff like that. That's about all of the plot I'm going to give away. Terrorists, Our Navy SEAL has to stop the terrorists. But before he even gets involved in stopping the terrorists, he kind of goes on a mission of his own to find himself, which I thought was a unique spin. I really did. So good on you, Jack Carr, for kind of taking a chance and going in a different direction at the beginning of this novel. I really enjoyed it. Do I think it's as good as Terminal List? No. Terminal List was one of the best thriller debuts I've ever read. True Believer? Can we call it a sophomore slump? Not quite. It's still a pretty damn good book. You know, I gave this a high rating, The Terminal List. This is still going to get a high rating. I'm going to tell you about an 8 out of 10. Still a great, great thriller, and I can't wait to get to Savage Sun to find out what that's about, and I will be doing a review of that later when I get to it. If you follow my channel, I'm reviewing all sorts of books. Every Stephen King novel in order of publication I am reviewing, along with about a half a dozen other series. But we'll slowly work our way through these Jack Carr thrillers. I think he's one of the better thriller debut writers, just new on the scene. Go get his books if you want to start with a new thriller writer. And you don't feel like you want to read like 15 books in a series, man. Dude only got 3 books out right at the moment. So far, the first 2 are pretty damn good. Take it from me, man. I read a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. I ain't got much else to say. True Believer. Fellow Utah writer, Jack Carr. Hey, man. I'm representing the Vegas Raiders, man, because the NFL season's about to start. Things are a-changing. Vegas Raiders. You know, I was born in Las Vegas. I think the Raiders knew that, and they made the appropriate change. I'm just saying.